I mentioned before we start, we have Lieutenant Colonel Alan West joining us. I haven't seen him in a while. I haven't seen anyone in a while, actually. But it's great to see you. Hello, sir.
It's good to be with you, Debbie, and hopefully you're being safe and you're healthy, you and Eric.
We are, and same to you and Angela and your family. You guys okay?
Yeah, we're doing fine here in the eastern hills of Garland, Texas.
Eastern Hills. I didn't think of it as hills. Okay. Anyway, I'm very glad that you're able to come on today. And I know most of our listeners probably already know you, but to very quickly remind our listeners, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, former member of the United States Congress from the state of Florida, 22nd Congressional District, served that as a Republican from 2011 to 2013, a military hero, military person who served our country in the Army in Kuwait and Iraq. And so he's just been a stellar American, now a very sought after speaker and commentator about political issues of the day, and also a candidate to become the Texas state chairman for the Republican Party, which we'll get to all those things, I hope. But so now we have gone through that. Okay, I want to start with, you have up on your website, theoldschoolpatriot.com, why we must reopen the economy. Let me start with that. This is the raging debate of the day. Dare we reopen our economy? So what is your argument that it's time to reopen the American economy?
It was very simple. If you go back to the statement that President Trump made, where he said we can't have the cure be worse than the problem. And so now we're at the point where we have 20,000 Americans that have unemployment claims. And then on top of that, right here in the state of Texas, you have 1 million Texans that have filed unemployment claims. We just saw the oil for the first time ever in the history of the United States of America close a trading day in the negative. Monday, it was minus $37.64 because there is no demand out there. I think the most important thing we need to do is to get the American people back working. We need to put in place policies that protect the most vulnerable. We know that the elderly and also people that have issues with obesity, high blood pressure, and also diabetes, we need to protect those individuals. We can start gradually getting this economy back to work, because if we continue to see more and more of our industrial sectors, and remember, the Texas is the economy. We stifle that economy, it has long-term ramifications.
Love that answer. And I'm as with so many crises, it becomes really important to be able to articulate the crises, to get, I hate the word slogans, but ways to capture the ideas. And people are working on these more and more. One that I love, back to work for the health of America.
Yes.
Yes, it's the health of the country. Also, you can protect the vulnerable and trust the healthy. It's really a sense that the government can trust us to be safe, to protect ourselves. Balance physical safety and economic survival. Another way to say it, a reopening in a thoughtful and responsible way. There are just ways we can do this. It seems like the picture is being drawn by some people. You either protect America or you go back to work and you put all of America at risk. And there is a place in between.
Well, that is the false narrative of the binary decision. It is not either or. It is not that we stay here in our houses and we live, or we go back to work and we all die. You know, Sir Winston Churchill had a great quote. He said that fear is a reaction and courage is a decision. So I think it's time for us to find those courageous leaders. And it is, listen to your first five, and it should be very disconcerting and disturbing to the American people that we have these elected officials, such as Phil Murphy in New Jersey, that he said he did not consider the Bill of Rights when he was writing out his mandates and orders. You look at Michigan with Gretchen Whitmer and some of the things that she is doing. Even here, as you said, in Dallas County with Clay Jenkins, where in Dallas County, we have had less than 70 people that have lost their lives because of COVID-19. But yet think about the economic ramifications that he is causing. But yet, if I'm correct, many of these elected officials continue to get a paycheck while they're telling Americans that they cannot go out and work for a paycheck.
They most certainly are. I'm glad you brought up those Dallas numbers. Matt, the wonderful producer, I sent you I think I sent you a meme. It's actually has a numbers. It has the top, back to work for the health of America. Okay, I'm going to ask our listeners just to look at this. The entire state of Texas is shut down to understand where we are. Entire state of Texas, Dallas County included. In Dallas County, we have 2.635 million people living in Dallas. So 2.65 million. we've only had 2,300 people test positive. So 2,300 test positive. And of those cases, positive cases, and we have 7,094, never mind, negatives. We've had 60 deaths, 60 in Dallas County. And so we had 2,300 positive cases out of 2.6 million, and the entire county shut down. And the state of Texas has similar numbers. State of Texas, we have 28.9 million people in the state of Texas. And we've had under 19,000 cases and 477 dead. I think that's as of today. These numbers are today. So the numbers don't bear out don't justify the reaction. So I want to ask you, do you think that part of, Colonel West, part of what's happening is more of a political decision? Is the virus, do you believe, being used for some political means by leftists, by Democrats?
Well, let's just look at the headline of an article that was in Politico last week where it said the economic meltdown gives Democrats new hope in Texas. We also know that on April the 2nd, the chairman of the House Pandemic Oversight Committee, Representative Clyburn, said this pandemic gives Democrats a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision. And also last week in a Time magazine article, Eric Holder talked about using the pandemic to change elections forever in the United States of America. So yes, you do have people that are looking at this as a political opportunity. And shame on them for wanting to bring about this type of, economic destitution upon the American people. And Debbie, when you take those numbers and you just go back a few years ago and you look at the 2017 to 2018 influenza season, just the common flu season, we had 61 million Americans that were infected. We had over 800,000 Americans that were hospitalized. We had 60,000 Americans who lost their lives just a few years ago to the common influenza. We did not have this type of reaction. So people are starting to get very concerned. We know that Dr. Deborah Birx came out and said that basically all deaths in America are being classified as coronavirus deaths. We know that we have many of these false positives that have come back. So the American people are no longer trusting these numbers because by their own admittance from the Imperial College of London model and the Institute for Hospital Metrics and Evaluations out of University of Washington, those models were wrong. And the IHME has continually been downgrading their predictions from what they said was going to be millions, and then they said it was going to be 100 to 200,000, and now they're talking about the same thing that we see every influenza season. It's anywhere from 30 to maybe 50,000.
It is the most astonishing thing. And the numbers you're talking about, we've gone through those numbers before in the show, just to talk about, just like in any model you create, including, in models that concern climate change, the only answers models can give you are based on whatever data is put in, assumptions are put in. So you can have assumptions put in, factual, you can have estimates, and you can have assumptions put in that are driven in part with some political motive. It's certainly, and in climate change, the assumptions put in are intended to drive the outcome that causes alarm. And in this case, even the assumptions about how bad it could get, they just seem political. But in any case, the models aren't. They're just best guesses by people who may have an agenda. I want to turn and ask you something else, though. This is so interesting. So Nancy Pelosi is talking about, the term they're using is a blue state bailout. But she's talking about when we have the next bill related to rescuing America from the coronavirus, that one of the bailout bills, that we need to put in there, she's trying to drive to have put in the elimination of the change that was made in tax law. Is the acronym is SALT, yes. But she wants to say the cap on SALT deductions, which is a benefit, which cause people who live in high tax states to end up paying more tax. She's basically saying one way to deal with coronavirus is to eliminate the cap on SALT deductions. It's mind-blowing how political that is and irrelevant to coronavirus.
Well, it's absolutely so. It's just the same as giving $25 million to the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts or the National Endowment for the Arts. What does that have to do with the fact that you have Americans that are worried about making their rent or their mortgage payment or how they're going to feed their families. Look, the real solution that we need to have here is for these politicians, these elected officials, to get out of the way of the American people and let us start managing our own lives, our own health, and let us get back to work. But what this has done is given them an incredible amount of power over the American people by driving us into this herd mentality, feared state, panic, paranoia, and hysteria. And they're leveraging that, as you said. Think about it. On Easter Sunday, churches were deemed non-essential, but yet you have marijuana stores that are essential. You're talking about trying to save lives during this COVID-19 crisis, but yet you have people that are saying abortion facilities and clinics, those are essential. While you have people that can't get their medical procedures done, such as hip replacements or cancer surgeries. So we have allowed elected officials to become lords over us and determine what is essential and non-essential. Like you see in some of these states, we're saying gun stores and also gun ranges are not essential, but that's tied to our Second Amendment right. And even here in Texas, we had to send that issue to the Attorney General for him to make that ruling, because here in Dallas County, Clay Jenkins had come out and said they're not essential.
It is mind-blowing. On the national level, I want to talk a little bit about, because it's so interesting how, as President Trump is saying, we've got to try to move forward, we've got to reopen the economy, the difference in how Democrat governors are responding versus Republican governors is kind of astonishing. It's very revealing about their mindset. So there was a particular, one more thing before this. So people are protesting all over this country. They're protesting in Virginia and a variety of states around the country. Do you think that, it's a funny thing because the issue seems complex to some people. It's like, well, why are they protesting that we get to go back to work? They aren't virologists. They're not experts in infectious diseases. They don't know what's best. But I kind of love that spirit that says, I don't have to be an immunologist. I don't have to be an expert in contagious disease to see the numbers aren't there and my life is being harmed. So do you think these protests are a good idea? I'm going to go more into what Trump said about them, but do you think they're justified?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, this past Sunday was April the 19th of 2020, and 245 years ago, there was a protest. That protest occurred at Lexington Green up in Massachusetts because the British were coming to disarm the Sons of Liberty. They were coming to destroy a weapons and armaments factory. So it is important that you stand up and let your voices be heard. And I know that people are saying that, the Americans should just sit down and shut up and listen to the experts. The experts have been wrong, and we have seen them be wrong. And great citizen journalists such as yourself are going out there and doing this research and getting the background on a lot of this and finding the gaps in a lot of these numbers and reporting. Think about the media showing us pictures of Italian hospitals or hospitals from other places to try to drive us into this state of fear, when we know that we have medical professionals in many states that are being laid off because there's not a lot of activity. There's plenty of hospital bed spaces that are open and available. That's one of the issues right here in the state of Texas. So the American people have the right to be able to challenge their elected officials. That's why we live in a republic. We don't live in a dictatorship. But it seems that there are some people that would prefer the latter than for us to be able to have our rights, freedoms, and liberties. They want to have more victims. They don't want to have victors.
Could not agree more. A particular example I thought was so insightful, the comment he chose to make. This is Democrat Governor Jay Inslee of Washington, and he was complaining that President Trump had tweeted out encouragement to the protesters. Trump had tweeted, "Liberate Minnesota." He had the same tweet for a variety of other states. And Jay Inslee's comment that was being upset about what the president was doing was to say he is encouraging, the president is fomenting domestic rebellion and spreading lies, even blah, blah, blah. He's setting himself up as an elected leader who can never be challenged. He's criticizing President Trump for encouraging people in his state in their protests. He's kind of saying, I'm the emperor. I have spoken. We're doing this. And he's angry that people are daring. As he said, they're fomenting domestic rebellion. I thought that was a window on how he sees the world and his own constituents.
Well, it's very interesting that when you have groups like Antifa that go out and conduct violence and things of this nature from the left side, You don't hear Jay Inslee or any of the other governors of these blue states coming out and speaking against them. But all of a sudden, when there are people that are standing up and saying you're infringing upon our individual liberties and rights, you're infringing upon our First Amendment rights of peaceably assembly, our First Amendment rights of freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof, our Second Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights. When you are arresting a dad who is out playing t-ball with his daughter and handcuffing him in front of his daughter, we've gone off the crazy train. And I think that that's what the American people are sick and tired of. And leaders find out, they find solutions. They don't sit around and say what you can't do. They try to figure out what can be accomplished, what can be done.
I love that point. And another thing, I just think it's amazing to look at not just how you've had just a tremendous increase in what I think of as really draconian orders by governors and mayors and city councils, but the virus, the spread of fear, especially by headlines of the left that the Democrat media mob, I often call them, but putting headlines out in stories that put a flash and number saying X number of people died today, never in the context of how many recovered, how many, what the overall numbers are. So it's a spread of fear, but it's starting, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, in my opinion, to break down our culture. You have, for example, New York City Mayor de Blasio encouraging New Yorkers to rat out social distance violators, to take a video of people who are violating the social distance rule and send it in to report them. And I just think that might be the saddest and most depressing thing of all is the American people some segment of them are going along with this, ratting each other out, complaining, calling the police because so-and-so had a guest at their house and I don't think it was a member of their family. It's just astonishing the breakdown in the civility and the connection in American culture flowing from how the left has handled and the media has handled this virus. But what's your take, first of all, on de Blasio?
Well, totally wrong. He's a failed leader. And you would think in a time like this, we would be building up community. We're building up trust amongst our neighbors. We will be helping each other out through these times and not trying to leverage it as a means by which we can start to put neighbor against neighbor. You think about down in Savannah, Georgia, that now the police are flying drones down in Savannah, Georgia to take video of people that may be, not doing the social distancing thing. You think about the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, who said he was going to take down the license plate numbers on Easter Sunday of people that were driving through drive-through communion, and he's going to take their license plates. The woman that was given a citation because she just wanted to get out of her house and go for a drive by herself in her own car, and she was given a citation for that. This is why the American people are taken to the streets, because as James Clyburn said, this pandemic gives Democrats a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision. That vision is the onerous, intrusive nature of government. That's why we fought a revolution 245 years ago. And just a couple of days ago, that shot was fired around the world that gave us the independence of these United States of America.
So well said. And I think it's just a vital thing for people to not just attach. We have in our own neighborhood, and you may have this too, this kind of neighborhood email thing going on, and it's just an endless, is next door it's called, but people will say, well, I saw, people outside and they're walking without masks on, and you don't even have to wear a mask, first of all, on our street. Yeah. Not that I want to be told to wear a mask or told when I have to anywhere, but people, there's so much fear they've embraced because of what I think is an exaggeration of the issue by media. And they are willing to attack the other neighbors. And I want to kind of cry out for America. We don't want to become that country. This is what third world and dictatorial, tyrannical governments did. They encouraged their citizens to turn other people in. We should be rebelling at the idea that anyone is being encouraged to turn each other, restore our sense of who we are as a country. It is, to me, it's not even left versus right. It's America and not America. We don't do that here.
Well, that's why your show is called America Can We Talk? But unfortunately, you have people that don't want Americans to talk. They don't want Americans to discuss independence, liberty, and freedom and individual rights. And when you see that leveraging of Americans against Americans, It kind of reminds me of how they operated in communist countries. It reminds me of how they operated in East Germany with the Stasi police and everything of this nature, and where people lived in absolute fear of all of a sudden being carted away for whatever reason, because a neighbor, says something against them. So this is not what we want. And I think one of the good things is for people to get out and get some fresh air. Now they're talking about coronavirus can jump 13 feet. So we need to increase the social distancing to 13 feet. Heck, tarantulas can't even jump that far. So, I mean, it is, again, these insidious things that you're seeing.
So I do want to hit one more topic with you. I'm so glad you happen to be available. I guess everyone's home and available these days, but so glad you're it's like everybody's home. But, this I want to see more of that spirit of people protesting. And one little thing I thought I meant to say earlier, I want to hit before we turn and talk about the state party chair race. But I think people can do things that are demands, even if you don't have any power to enforce them. For example, local officials who are still, the county commissioners court in Dallas, they have fairly healthy salaries. There ought to be a petition saying, you know what, if we can't work, you don't get paid either. You don't get a paycheck till we come back to work. There needs to be something, and to local officials, all sorts of people who issue these edicts, seemingly with no consequence to them. Their life marches on. They're not really, they may be honoring, some aspects of the orders, but they're out and about, going to work, holding their meetings, and collecting their salary. I'd like to see a little bit of pushback against them. Any thought about that?
No, you're absolutely right, because think about this. The means by which they get their salary are from the people that they have told they cannot go out and work. So therefore, are they going to get a break from having to provide those tax resources when they've been told by these exact same people that they cannot go and make a living for themselves? Well, then they should not be accepting the taxpayers' money while they're making these decisions for us to be in this state of nature. So, I think that's one of the important things. And that comes back to, think about how Nancy Pelosi was caught, talking about her gourmet ice cream in her freezer. There's some people that are just worried about, what are they going to be able to eat? Their food lines. Food lines are starting to see immense participation. We don't want to see that in America. And we don't need a depression that is brought about by our own foolish decisions. And again, when you look at certain news media outlets, Debbie, you will see people talking about how we can't get back to work and telling what we can't do. And if we do this, you're going to have more deaths. They're not talking about what we can do as Americans. And that's a complete violation of the spirit of who we are.
That I agree. And plus, I mentioned earlier, but the idea of trusting Americans actually want to be healthy. And those who are healthy and they're not in the susceptible categories, they want to work. They actually don't want to become sick. They're going to comply. They can be trusted to comply without being forced to stay in their homes. There was never really a need to do that to start with. But the notion of trust the people, protect the vulnerable, and restore the health of the economy. I love that kind of rhythm, or that kind of thought.
And I would recommend you get a gentleman by the name of Darren Babcock on. He has Bonton Farms, which is an incredible agricultural development down in the Bonton community here in Dallas, because everyone is talking about the adverse effects on the inner cities and the minority communities, where we know that obesity, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. Look at what Darren Babcock has done down there in tackling that problem, that issue. That's what leadership does. Leadership does not try to take something and leverage it for political advancement. They try to solve it.
I'm so glad you mentioned him. I just read about that. Like yesterday, I just read about that. So I will reach out to him. It's a very, very cool story. Okay, I want to turn to the great state of Texas. You're running for state party chair for the GOP. And I want to just step back before we get to that race. So Texas, I see on the one hand touted in some headlines, like Texas is taking the lead. We're putting our plan forward. We're going to begin to get people back to work. We have I think this coming Friday, you're permitted, retail stores can be open, but you have to call ahead, order, and run in. And so you can buy something from a retail store, but you can't go in. So that if you needed only gym socks, which you don't have to try on, that would work. Or if you only need a new blender. But what if you need things you got to try on or look at? But anyway, so do you think that Texas is favorably compared to, for example, Jay Inslee of Washington, but do you think Texas is moving fast enough?
No, I don't, and I'm not trying to be critical of anyone, but America looks to Texas to be a leader. And we were told that last week Governor Abbott was going to come out and give his plan for reopening Texas. What he told us was he announced a committee who would come up with a plan, and they would get back to us by the 27th of April. The governor has a staff. He doesn't need to bring in an additional committee. This is something they should have been looking at. And really, when you think about this whole thing about curbside and takeout, and that's what we're doing already, opening up state parks, but then telling people even if you go in a state park, you have to have a mask. So no, we're not going in the right direction. And I would hope that when the governor looks at the fact that oil closed for the first time ever in the history of the United States of America at a negative dollar mark per barrel, $37.64 in the negative. That's because we don't have the demand out there. Think about the bankruptcies. Think about the unemployment that's going to really hit the oil and gas industry. If we don't create that demand, that means getting people back out there, getting people to work. So I think that we need to take a very tiered approach. We can incrementally get things going back. Restaurants, maybe 50% capacity, not 100%, but just trust us to do what is right. Give us the guidelines, give us the left and right limits, and let us get back out there and do what we have always done in America. And that's try to take care of ourselves and not have big government nanny state try to do it for us.
Amen to that. Yeah, I think a lot of conservatives were pretty disappointed to see the governor, our Texas Governor Abbott's first venture out into public about how we're going to open up Texas. Very timid steps, very slow, and I think that you're right, Alan, or Lieutenant Colonel. There's just a determination in this state, usually for self-reliance, can do. We're the leader. We show people what liberty is all about. And we're not doing that so far. I think there will be pushback if it keeps on going as slowly as it is. Okay, so on to your running for state chair. I know we talked about it in the show before, but I'd love to have you talk about it again. Why you're running to be chairman of the Texas GOP, and how's it going?
Well, it's going very well, even though we have this lockdown, shelter-in-place, forced isolation. You look at this platform right here, we can use social media, Skype, Zoom, Facebook Live to continue to connect with people and get our message out, and that's exactly what we're doing. Texas is on the forefront of an ideological battlefield, and we cannot afford to lose Texas to the progressive socialist left, and they are targeting Texas. Eric Holder is in charge of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. They want to get the Texas State House. Michael Bloomberg is going to spend $8 to $10 million in Texas to flip the Texas State House, running anti-Second Amendment, anti-gun candidates, gun control candidates. He was successful in Virginia. We got to make sure he's not successful here. And the only way that we can make sure that we win, Debbie, is to go on offense. We cannot be in the reactionary mode. We cannot be in defense. We have to make them define this whole thing about turning Texas blue. And as I said in a little Facebook post, when you have Democrats that are, cheering on the economic meltdown, as they called it, in Texas, believing that that's going to provide them a new hope, no one should be voting for a political party that wants to see the economic demise of Texans.
So well said. It is an astonishing window on how Democrats think. Oh, things are going badly. Good opportunity for us. It just is it fits exactly what they do across the country. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, I'm so glad you could join me today. I want to mention your website again, theoldschoolpatriot.com, but also what is the website people can go to learn more about and support your campaign to become a Republican chair for Texas?
It is west4texas.com, west4texas.com.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Thank you for joining me.
All the best.
Same to you. All the best. Okay, my friends, this is a really to me very upbeat opportunity to take a closer look at Texas, take a closer look at how patriots and conservatives are looking at this whole coronavirus issue and how we're going to handle it and how we're going to move forward.